Hey everybody, welcome back to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm your host, Gordo Gambles, and welcome back to another full card breakdown, this time for UFC Vegas 64? 64. These cards are flying through. We only have like 6 cards left of the year, and what was a pretty fun 2022, but we are back. DraftKings breakdown, as always, talking over every single fight from a DraftKings perspective. Took a couple weeks off, and I'll be honest, I'm a new man here. I just came back from Vegas, and it was probably a good thing that I didn't give out a video last week, because you know what, me and my girlfriend were down there in Vegas. We went to the Grand Canyon, we went out to all these casinos and dinners in Vegas, and you know what, after my performance at UFCVegas64, I kind of wanted to go back to the Grand Canyon and instead of take pictures, probably just jump in it. You know, I played Fremd, I played Hooper, I struggled, and that's okay. That's what happens if you don't do the appropriate research. So what we're doing is we're back here, we're back in the setup, we're back on home soil, and I put in the work for this card, which has been painful. This card is not the best, but nonetheless, I will go over it from top to bottom. Hope to give you guys my insight of what I'm playing, what I'm targeting, my ownership, and really how we can make some money on this card. So without further ado, I say we jump right in it. Thank you guys for staying with me. Before I do so, like button down below, subscribe to the channel. Let's do this. Now, this is an ugly one. Usually I start with my fight to target, but I think there's more fights I want to fade than target. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go old school. We're going to start off in the main event. We have Marina Rodriguez versus Amanda Lemos, 8.8K on Rodriguez. The return on Lemos is 7.4. This is an interesting matchup. If this was going to be a 3-round event, we'd be taking this from a completely different angle. But when we are looking for 5 rounds, we have to play into the narrative here that the cardio isn't there for Lemos. Lemos is a great DraftKings player because in those 3-round fights, she's able to accrue good power, knockdown potential. She's explosive. But what we have here is a pretty simple matchup in someone who is going to be explosive in those early rounds versus someone who's going to be able to stay out there and win in the later ones. I think it's a fight where the winner's probably going to score very well, and it's probably pretty binary. It's going to be Amanda Lemos early on, landing the powerful shots, being explosive, having the ability to maybe throw in some takedowns. But on the other hand, when she can't do that, when she gasses out from throwing everything into those shots, it's going to be Rodriguez who is still there. Rodriguez who's going to have the volume and the accuracy to really wilt her over the stretch. And if she is gassed the same way she's gassed in her 3-round fights, Marina Rodriguez can be able to take over down the stretch. I do think at 7.4K Lemos is live, but I do think Rodriguez is durable enough to withstand that early onslaught. So for me, I am looking towards the side of Marina Rodriguez here at 8.8K. I do think she goes out there and finds a later finish on a gassed Amanda Lemos. With that being said, I'm going to be clenched the entire time that I have a ticket for Marina Rodriguez, just because Lemos early on is no joke. She has power. I just don't think she has enough durability and cardio to stand with Rodriguez for 15-minute time. So in my mind, I'm hoping Lemos goes out there, balls to the wall, and in doing so, gasses herself out. 8.8K, don't mind Rodriguez. However, the ceiling is definitely there for Amanda Lemos. Like I said, back from Vegas, I went over there. I ate really well. You know what? After eating at those buffets, those Vegas-style buffets, I kind of felt like these next 2 fighters. I kind of felt like Chase Sherman and Josh Parisian. These 2 big boys, heavyweights. This is an ugly, ugly matchup, but unfortunately, if you look down below, this kind of says fight to target. And let me explain myself. We're going to go with a couple fights to target here, but I have to talk about this one because it's such an ugly fight, and these ugly fights score very well. When you have 2 big boy heavyweights at this middle range salary, you have an extremely volatile matchup. The Vanilla Gorilla Chase Sherman has some 100-point wins. He has the ability to go out there and put his power to the test. So let me take a step back. Is this the prettiest fight in the world? No, but the upside is definitely there. Parisian sucks. Sherman sucks. There's no denying that. But in doing so, they have the ability to go out there and make it a sloppy heavyweight fight that scores very, very well. Am I going to confidently pick a side? No, but I do think that at 8K, Josh Parisian has the ability to go out there and win this fight at a pretty high clip. He has the takedown upside, and I do think that his path to victory scores very, very well. I think this is a perfect way to target your GPP slate because they are so volatile. Their ceilings are definitely there. However, I can't play them with that much confidence. So the pick is going to be Josh Parisian. I think his ceiling is definitely like 120 points in this spot here with takedowns, ground and pounds, and a finish being there. But Sherman's ceiling is also there as well. He's got power. It's going to be a sloppy fight. But for some reason, when we look at these sloppy heavyweight fights, they usually score very well. I would recommend having a side. However, it is very, very ugly. So with that being said, with that ugly fight out of the way, I kind of want to talk about it so I don't have to look at their faces on my screen anymore. We're going to go with another fight to target here. We're looking at the Mario Bautista versus Benito Lopez. This is a really, really fun fight. And of course, Benito Lopez, a lot of the newer viewers will not know who this guy is. Well, he hasn't fought in 3 years. The Golden Boy is sitting at 7.1K, and he's had some exciting fights at the UFC. He does have potential, but he's been gone for 3 years selling houses. And I've heard that a lot this week, and although I'm not one to play into the narrative that often, it is a really bad look when your full attention isn't on fighting. If I'm betting on somebody, I want them to be a dedicated fighter. And I do think that on the other side of things, Mario Bautista is improving. He's getting a lot better. Can we say that about Benito Lopez? Can we say that his heart is fully in the game? I do not think so. With that being said, though, both these guys are insane finishers. So Benito Lopez comes out firing on all cylinders. He's a very, very fun fighter to watch, but he isn't the best technically. And I think that when it comes to technicality and skill, you're going to give that to Mario Bautista, and that's why he is the favorite in this spot. I do think that that 9.1K is warranted, and I do think that he does find a finish in this spot, whether it be through his great grappling that ran through Brian Kelleher last time, whether it be the power, technicality, volume that happens throughout this time, whether it be him pushing the pace on a guy whose heart's not fully in it. I do think he can break Benito Lopez down the stretch. The reason we are targeting this fight as a whole is because all of Bautista's losses have come by finish. He's been knocked out before. And I do think that if Lopez wants to stand a chance, he's going to have to pressure Bautista and catch him with something. Not impossible, but not likely. Either way, I want ownership on one side because I do think the winner scores very, very well. However, a huge inclination towards Mario Bautista with that finish ability, with takedown, submission, control time, constant volume and pressure. The guy's an animal, and I do think he gets it done. Either way, I want one of these sides here, 9.1K. This is a much more attractive fight here. Last but not least, the third fight to target. We are talking about Nuerdanbieke versus Derek. First things first, I have to say, Derek Minner has broken my heart before, and it's hard for me to talk about it, so emotional because of what he did to TJ Laramie. He ruined an almost perfect night when I bet TJ Laramie then, but it's okay. I had that coming. And that really just shows what Derek Minner is known for. He has 26 wins and 23 of them are by submission. Those are absolutely insane numbers. The guy has skills to pay the bills, and that guillotine is no joke. He's facing a guy in Shylon who is going to give him those opportunities to get those submissions. A guy who's wrestle first, who also wants to go in for a grind heavy pace, such as he's done to his recent opponents. Do I think Shylon's necessarily the best opponent for Minner? No, there could be better matchups, but he's going to play into Minner's game plan. He's going to get it to the ground where Minner wants to be. And both these guys, as well as having their own share of submission wins, have been submitted multiple times. I do think this fight ends at a pretty high clip. And when you're giving me these price tags, I do think that Derek Minner is definitely very live at 7.3K. Shylon is 28 years old and has 47 fights. First off the bat, that is extremely good to look at because he's got experience. But is that against the best level of competition? Not really. He's been finished 6 times. I mean, the guy has definitely holes in his game. Derek Minner's one to capitalize on that. And not only is he one to do that, but he's one to do it with DFS gold because he is killer to be killed. He is submission or be submitted most of the time. And in a fight that's going to have heavy grappling exchanges such as this one, I do think that the winner scores very, very well. My inclination is to take Derek Minner, and I do think I'll have more shares of him at 7.3K because he's such an appealing dog with that upside, with that finish ability to exploit the submission defense of Shylon here. But you cannot count him out at 8.9K. Shylon does have a good path to victory. He's going to be the minute winner. I think he's going to have better cardio, and he has the ability to put away Minner such as Minner has been put away before. Either way, I do think that this fight scores very, very well. Give me one of these two. I'm loving them this week on DraftKings. 3 fights to target. Let's give you a safer play up top. It is going to be the most expensive fighter, probably a pretty high-owned one, but I am liking Miranda Maverick this week. 9.4K, we've seen this fight happen before. She has already dismantled Shanna Young, and I do think she does it again. She's a very, very talented fighter. She has been improving. Although Shanna Young has as well since their fight, I do think that Maverick is levels above. She's going to have takedown upside, volume upside. I think she's a better striker as well. Power, control time, all the measurables are there. And I do think at this point, when she's a fighter who's really only lost to Erin Blanchfield, we're not going to talk about that Macy Barber fight, she's fought the much better level of competition. And this is probably a step down. I do think that she's getting a favorable matchup here at 9.4K. I don't think it's high enough. I'm going to put Miranda Maverick's floor at around 80 points. And that's a bit insane because you never really think someone's going to have that high of a floor, but I really do think she wins this fight at a very, very high clip. And in doing so, it's going to involve takedowns. It's going to involve control time and most likely a finish. I do think she gets her out of here. Side note, plus 900 on a KO is absolutely wild. But I just do think she's a safe piece for your cash buildup, and probably even if you need an anchor, if you want to go out there and get some risky underdogs. Either way, 9.4K, I really do like Miranda Maverick this week, and I do not think I'll be able to get to Shanna Young that much. This next one's very interesting. Grant Dawson versus Marco Madsen. Marco Madsen, the silver medalist wrestler, the guy has skills. However, it is not a wrestling match. This is a UFC fight, and in a UFC fight, I do think that it's an interesting one because when Madsen came into the UFC, I mean, he struggled with his striking, he struggled with his cardio, but he had that wrestling in his back pocket. Grant Dawson's kind of like that because not only did he come into the UFC as primarily a wrestler, but he's got grappling in his back pocket, but he himself has kind of had cardio issues in certain fights as well. It's interesting because you think that the better wrestler is going to be Marco Madsen, and then you have to think that the better grappler is going to be Grant Dawson. Well, how does this one play out? Usually when you got two wrestlers, they stand up on the feet. And I do think that the better striker of the two is going to be Marco Madsen. Funny enough, he's shown those improvements. For me, I'm looking at this fight, and I do think that Grant Dawson, gun to my head, if they're 50-50, I take him. But at 7.2K, Marco Madsen's looking very appealing because I think that in these wrestling exchanges, he's going to have the wrestling advantage. I think that when it comes to physicality and strength, he's going to have those advantages. And every second that this is on the feet, I think he's going to have the advantage there as well. So how does Marco Madsen lose this fight? Well, not only is it hard for me to picture him finishing Grant Dawson, so his ceiling's not exactly there, but it's also hard for me to see him being completely trustworthy for 3 rounds. I think Grant Dawson has shown some decent skills, but when we're looking at his price tag of 9K, I mean, is he more reliable than Mario Bautista? I don't think so. Does he have that same volatility as Nuerdanbieke? I don't think so either. So it's really hard for me to get him, and instead I'm trying to side here with Marco Madsen. I do think his floor is there because I don't see him really going out there getting submitted early on. I think he has minute winning ability and fight winning ability as well. I just struggle with the ceiling. However, if you're looking for an underdog this week, I really do think Marco Madsen is live at 7.2K. And last but not least, let's talk about this Ulanbekov versus Maness fight because it's a really intriguing one. Maness cutting down for the first time to 125, which is absolutely insane. Ulanbekov has been, and he's getting a tough task here. I mean, when I look at this fight and I look at the price tags, I expected Ulanbekov to be a bigger favorite here, especially with the way their styles match up. I think it may be due to recency bias to fighting Tim Elliott and losing in that spot, but Maness doesn't have that same threat that Elliott does. Elliott's a scrambly guy, he's always going to get up, but Maness has really struggled off his back, and I do think that Ulanbekov has the takedown and control time to really put him there. So this is a fight where I'm leaning towards Ulanbekov's side. At 8.6K, he doesn't have the highest ceiling because he doesn't always throw that much from top position, but he's going to have takedowns, control time, and I do think he wins this fight. So at 8.6K, I do think he's a relatively safer option up top, but it's also going to have to come with what we see from Maness on the scales on Friday, just because he's cutting down, he does have power, he's going to have insane height and reach for the division, but I do think it's a tough matchup for him. I'm going to be really interested to see how it plays out, but I am going to lean with Ulanbekov up top. But with that being said, let's round out the rest of the card. Munoz versus Sherman is a very, very interesting one for me. I do think that Munoz has a high ceiling here, but the only reason I haven't talked about him yet is because he's really hard to trust. I think that he's going to have the ability to finish Sherman at this point. I mean, he's a finisher, but he has been finished himself as well. I can't trust him as much as I can, the Marina Rodriguez, the Ulanbekovs, but if you're looking for a risky GPP play, Munoz is definitely there. We're missing a bit from Sherman, but I do think that his path to victory scores well as well, trying to find that chin of Munoz here. But I do think that the most likely winner and someone with a pretty high ceiling is going to be Johnny Munoz. I just don't know if I have that same confidence to back him as others around him, which is why I haven't talked about him yet. Hadley Candelario is an interesting one. I do think that Hadley wins this fight at a pretty high clip, but doesn't have the highest ceiling. Takedowns are there, sure, but he's going to score more takedowns and have more finish ability than Maverick, Bautista, Nuerdanbieke. Hey, I don't think so. So it's really hard for me to get to him at that price tag. However, decent in cash. I think he beats Candelario pretty easily here with those takedowns. And I do think he's a guy that the UFC can market off of, which is why they're kind of trying to give him a win here. With that being said, Candelario showed decent submission defense, so I don't really know if Hadley's going to get him out of there too convincingly. So it's kind of a pass for me because I don't think Hadley's ceiling is as high as the people around him. And then, I mean, these last 3 fights are disgusting to talk about. Vidal Pascual is a questionable affair, to say the least. Really low level. I do think you get to Pascual if you're leaning a dog because Vidal hasn't shown me too much. And I do think that they're both going to be really, really low owned. So if you need someone with a high floor, I do think this fight goes all 3 rounds. And Pascual probably has more minute winning ability. So she is a decent dog if you're really grasping at straws this week. Magny Rodriguez is a pretty high level affair, but I'm also fading it because I do think it goes all 3 rounds. And I don't know if I can trust Magny to go out there and shoot takedowns enough. And I don't think that the volume of Rodriguez is going to score enough to, be a valuable dog for me this week. I think I am leaning the Rodriguez side, but he's shown 65 points in his last win, 87 before that. Not always the best scorer on DraftKings. And against a tough guy like Magny, I don't think his ceiling is necessarily there. I think in a 15-minute striking affair, the winner's not going to score too well. So I'm kind of under-owned on this fight for sure. And then Vienna versus Frey. I'm not playing Frey in any lineups. She lost to Vanessa Demopoulos, which is something you can never forgive anybody. And I do think that all of the GBP upside lays in Polyana Vienna. 100% finish rate, especially for women's division, is absolutely insane. Her ceiling is definitely there, but how many times is she going to get a submission here? I don't know. It's hard for me to trust someone like Polyana Vienna because she is really sub or bust. I don't really think she's going to go out there and win well in a decision, but her path to victory is there. So I do think that I will have some ownership of her. Not really much on Frey, and I'm hoping that she does get the submission, but not with as much confidence as the previously mentioned fighter. So there we go. We have breaking down this interesting card, and you know what? I'm really happy to be back and talking fights with you guys, but this is going to be the only video I have this week. No no full card betting breakdown just because I don't have that same passion for it. So instead, I'm going to get some advance on the UFC 281 card, and next week is going to be an absolute banger for sure. I'll probably get the Four Horsemen on with Lou, Liam, and Wiz talking fights, giving out some great content here. But instead, DFS is all we got this week. So please take the opportunity, like the video down below, subscribe to the channel. If you guys have any questions, at GamblesGordo on Twitter is where to find me. Hope you guys have gained some decent knowledge from this video. Enjoy the fights this weekend, and let's make some money, guys.